Hey guys, Duncannon here. Today, in this video, we'll be going over the in-game HUD for ground vehicles. Last video was a little too long for my liking, so I'll be splitting this into two videos with the aircraft HUD coming in a separate video rather than trying to condense it all into one big long one. So, let's get to it. Now, I'll be taking the M26 Pershing here into a test drive to show you some of the permanent HUD features. Now, I'm going to need some alternate shells there, so we'll grab them. We'll be going over all the HUD elements that you can see in front of you right now, starting from the left. So in the bottom left here, we have the paper model of the tank. This is a live model, so you turn the turret left and right, you swing your top-mounted machine gun around, it'll all track all that kind of stuff, and it'll update your damage model as you get hit by things. You also have a couple different indicators for the most important parts of your vehicle on the top left hand side there, being your tracks, your turret, your gun, and your engine. Obviously, if any of these things get knocked out, you're going to be having a bad time. So at a glance, you can see the damage status of them. Now, if they're kind of see-through like they are right now, a bit hard to see, then they're perfectly fine, working at 100% efficiency. However, if they go red, it means that they're currently damaged and may not be functioning at 100%. If they're black, they are destroyed and need repairing. So that stack of shells there with the number next to it, that is your ready rack. So the number indicates the amount of shells in your ready rack, the M26 Pershing having 10. That means that you can fire 10 rounds at your maximum rate of fire. Once those rounds have been fired, your fire rate decreases unless your loader has had time to replenish the ready rack in between shots. If you're firing at maximum rate of fire, you just fire 10 rounds in a row, your next shot, your 11th round, is going to load significantly slower because the loader is going to be getting that ammo from a different place in the tank, and that's going to be less convenient for him to do, therefore it's going to take him longer. Now, just beneath the ready rack there, you've also got your important crew members here. You've got your gunner, your driver, and your commander. Now, they are the same indicators as the previously mentioned turret, gun, engine, tracks. That they are indicators to show you whether your crew members are knocked out. Now, if your crew members do get knocked out, they will get replaced by someone else up until the point where you have 2 crew members left. If you go down to 1 crew member, your vehicle is knocked out. So at a glance, you can see that maybe your gunner's been knocked out and that's why your tank's no longer firing. So you might need to pull back, find some cover, wait for someone else to take the gunner's spot, and then you can go back to fighting the tank. Now, the 2 crew members sitting side by side there with the number next to it, that is the amount of crew members your vehicle has. As I mentioned just before, if you go down to 1, you're knocked out in that vehicle and you have to go spawn in a new one. The Pershing has 5 here, the same as a lot of American tanks in World War II and Cold War. So that means you've got a couple spare, but your tank won't operate at maximum efficiency if you have less than 5, less than the maximum crew. Now, the only other thing to mention on the paper model down in the left there is it shows your current gear that you're in, your engine's RPM, and your speed. On to the next thing, the azimuth up the top, that is your standard compass, works just like any other compass. It's great for giving a really quick general idea to your teammates on where the enemy that you're currently fighting is, or someone that's maybe shot at you and knocked something out. You need help, you need someone to cover you. Using the compass is fantastic and you should use it as much as you can. It's almost certainly an underutilized piece of the HUD. I find that I use it a lot with friends on Discord, but in terms of general gameplay, people don't use it nearly as much as they should, myself included. Moving on, we have the minimap in the bottom right. So the minimap shows a whole bunch of different events that are currently going on in the battle. So you get chevrons for hit markers, you'll get player pings, you'll get artillery indicators, all kinds of stuff on there. It's a fantastic habit to get into checking the minimap as often as you can without staring at it the whole time and not looking at the threats that might be appearing in front of you. Give it a glance every couple seconds, every 10 seconds maybe, just to keep up your situational awareness, so you can help out your teammates if they need, and so you can let your teammates know how to help you. Now, just as a side note, I had a small issue with the tail end of this recording, and so I've had to re-record it. Since then, they've added in a new HUD feature. being the MG ammo markers here. So this guy here for your coaxial machine gun, this guy for your pintle-mounted commander's machine gun, more for your anti-air kind of mode. And I've also since aced this tank, so I've got a few more things down the bottom here that you might notice. Just going through this action bar down the bottom though, which was next up on the list, as you can see, you've got your different ammo types on the left there. You've got your artillery next, your fire protective equipment, your tow cable, and then your crew replenishment button all down there. Any other extra bits and bobs that you might have, like they're adding in drones, for example, for the modern vehicles, that's going to be down there too. So anything that you can do to interact with your tank in a battle is going to be found on that action bar. Now just going over the ammo real quick, the AP round that I have loaded, the one there with the white border on it, that white border indicates that I have one of those rounds loaded and it's also next up to be loaded. If I was to select the HE there, you'll see that that now goes to a yellow border on the HE. That means that that round isn't loaded but is next up to be loaded. And if I was to fire off that AP round that's already loaded into the gun, you'll see it will switch to white, as that is the round that's being loaded and the next one to be loaded after that. Now if I wanted to switch back to the AP, you can see that that's yellow now and that will be the next round loaded. So I'll fire that one off there like that and it's gone back to white. Now artillery is the next thing on that list. If I hit the artillery button, it comes up with this call for artillery strike menu. This allows you, using the green cursor here, to select wherever you would like, and it will show anyone that's spotted by team members, anyone that's recently been hit by someone on that map, so you can drop them just drop the artillery, drop the shells just on top of that guy there, for example, and that will go and cool down and slowly come back until you get your next go at artillery. Now, the little numbers down in the bottom right shows how many shells or how many uses of that ability you have. So the fire protective equipment, for example, you can do that twice. Once you've done that, if you get set on fire a third time, unfortunately you're going to have to rely on the goodwill of your teammates, which is not necessarily always that reliable in random team games. If you're playing by yourself especially. If you're playing with a mate, obviously he should come and help you if he can. But yeah, after those two uses, you're going to burn. Now the next thing on the list is the tow cable. So this is something that you have to activate, and it looks like this when you activate it. It goes to a darker background. It's more of a light grey when it's deactivated like that, darker background when it's activated, and that means someone can hook up to you and tow you out the way, say if your engine's disabled, or you can pull a wreck out of the way if you need to get down a narrow street or something like that. It's a great feature that has definitely found itself more useful since the wrecks have become a permanent feature of the battlefield. And the last one there is the crew replenishment button. So if you're in a capture circle, you can replenish one of your crew members that has been knocked out, in inverted commas obviously, in battle, and so you can get your crew effectiveness back up to where it should be. Now, something just to mention about crew replenishment, you can only do that once. You don't get it refreshed when you're in a cap circle. It's once per life in that vehicle. Moving on to one of the last things here is I'll go over the different view modes that you have when you're playing ground vehicles. So obviously we're in the third-person view mode right now. I can look around, I can get a pretty good view of the battlefield, and I can still aim my tank and point fire shots just like that. However, if you want to be a little bit more precise, you can go into the gun sight view, which for me is bound to shift. I think that was the default at some stage. I'm not sure if it still is. And now you can see I have my aiming reticle, I have a whole bunch of range markers and some lead markers. Once I've fired around, I can see that the white circle, which is my reticle, will go to red and then slowly fill green once the round is reloaded, and then go back to white once it's loaded. In this mode, you also have the range finding feature. So for me, that's bound to R. If I hit R when I'm aiming at something, it's going to slowly fill up that bar left to right, that measuring range bar, and it's going to tell me how far away that object is roughly. Now this doesn't have to be a vehicle, you can do it on the crest of a hill, a house, some marker that you think is going to be roughly the range of your next shot if you know that someone's around but they haven't exposed themselves yet. That's how I most often use this feature. And so rangefinder told me it was about 500 meters away. So if I take a shot at that Panther's turret at 500 meters, it's allowed me to land my first shot, and this time I've knocked him out with that first hit. Now the other view mode that you have on all ground vehicles is your binocular view. For me, that's bound to control. I believe the default is B. I've switched around a few of my controls so that I've got B is now my commander sight view, which is for more modern vehicles, and I can go over that in a later video, but for the newer players that will be watching this video, it's probably a little bit high up the tech tree for me to bother going through. So we'll just stick to binoculars for this video. Now, as you can see, you don't actually get control over your gun. My gun is still pointing at that Panther over there in the distance, but I have a slightly elevated view, still in a gun sight kind of mode, and that allows me to get a slightly more higher view of the battlefield and allow me to look around and scan the horizon without moving my turret around. One of the most common things you'll see is people giving themselves away by wiggling their turret around trying to scan the horizon in the gun sight mode. That movement is going to catch the eye of someone on the opposite team, and they're going to see you much sooner than you see them if you're just looking around with your commander with the binocular view mode. Now we're going to switch over to some of the screenshots of some gameplay I've taken recently. This is just to show off some of the temporary HUD features, as I call them. So you'll see here that there is these two double chevrons in front of me. I'll highlight them with some boxes just to make them super obvious. So those chevrons indicate that there is an enemy that has been hit by someone of your team. Now that could be yourself, it could be a teammate, doesn't really matter. It just represents that an enemy has been hit by a member of your team. And it gives you a vague location of where that person was when they got shot. So moving on to the next screenshot here, you can see that the little eye icon there in the red box, that is very similar to a chevron, but instead of it being a marker based on an enemy getting hit, it's a marker based on an enemy getting scouted. Now, the difference between getting hit and scouted is that the scouting marker will be around for a lot longer. So someone who's scouted is going to have that little indicator pop up on people's interfaces for much longer than the hit icon, and it will follow them around if they're moving. It's still a very generalized location. It's not always going to ping directly on top of them. Sometimes it will ping to their left or their right, depending on where you're looking at them from. But that's much the same as the hit indicator. The main difference is the longevity of the marker there. Now the last screenshot I want to talk about here is the yellow chevron. Now the difference between the kind of red goldy chevron and the bright yellow chevron is that the yellow chevron doesn't indicate a hit, it indicates a location that a teammate has pinged directly. Now there's a keybind in there which is set squad marker, I believe, or something along those lines, and you can assign it to a button. And whenever you are looking at a location, you can press that button and it will ping that yellow chevron exactly where you're looking. Now, Gaijin put this in as a more accurate way of communicating with your teammates as to where the enemies might be or where they're going or they're most likely to be. It's just a much more effective way of communicating with your teammates as to the potential location of enemies. Instead of bringing up the map and trying to use the map ping to kind of guess where they might be, you can just look directly at them either with your binoculars or your gun sight and hit that set target marker button, and you can guarantee that you're going to be accurate with your notifications to your friends. Well, that's it from me today, guys. I tried to keep it short and sweet. Don't know if I actually succeeded in doing that, but hopefully you at least have a much better understanding of your in-game HUD now for ground vehicles. Let me know in the comments below if you want to see any other tutorials about specific weapon systems or anything like that, and I'll be happy to go through them for you guys. But yeah, if you could like and subscribe, that'd be great. Get some momentum going for the channel and keep the content coming. All right, have a good one, guys. Cheers.